Greetings viewers and welcome to my channel. In our last session of the series, my guest Khusro Sahab talked about the solutions to the problems that the world is facing today. He identified 5 key areas as part of the solution, namely submission to God, service to humanity, giving, humility, and success. For your convenience, links to the previous sessions appear in the description of this video. Now let's start with the new session. Also, Saab, in the first session, we had identified 5 areas that were creating the problems in the world. And in our last session, we had identified 5 key areas of the solutions that we have to work upon. Do you want to add anything in the problem areas and to the solutions?
Yes, Adam. I think that as we have been thinking about it, I've been thinking about it. There are, I don't want to sort of burden you with too many points, but in the problem areas, I've been thinking about a sixth area, and I think I would be remiss if I did not mention it, and that is the debt burden. I hear numbers of the total debt, like very high numbers, like $90 trillion. No? And a very large number of these are money owed by developing countries or poor countries. And for them, it is not possible ever to repay these loans. So what is happening is that they're working hard just to pay the interest. And even that, sometimes they have to borrow to pay the interest. So this is a lot of the so-called developing countries. They will never develop. And this will create hardships in their countries, inflation and discontent, and make them even more vulnerable than they are. So I think this is a very important thing. And we have been talking about um, rescheduling or writing off these loans, particularly to the African countries. And now we see what is happening in the African countries. There have been coups d'etats and democracy is not working and so on. And behind all this is the fact that nobody has the solution as to how they will ever repay their debt, country
So,
after country.
so Khusro Sahab, can we include the powerful in seeking the solution to the problems?
Well, I don't think the powerful are interested. But I want to make a very important point over here. It suits the powerful to maintain the status quo because they have control. They have control over the assets of all these poor countries, all the developing countries, all the people who are powerless. However, so they will not be interested. Why should they be interested? They have created this world. However, the people who live in the powerful countries are good people. We can and should enlist their help. They are decent, honest people who care about the suffering of the other human beings. But, you know, they are guilty of not taking into account the people whom they have put in power. There are only a few thousand people who are controlling the world. Can you imagine the imbalance? These are the trillionaires, the billionaires of this world. And there are not many. And their constituents in their own countries don't agree with these policies. Their voices are allowed a little bit because of the so-called freedom of speech, but they are not listened to. And so I think part of the plan should be not to ignore the powerful countries. There are some, people in Ireland, for example, have very powerful voices when it comes to humanitarian issues. In the Scandinavian countries, these represent the block of power, but they have to be mobilized. So it should not necessarily be strictly a powerful versus the powerless. When we talk about humanity, the majority of people, I believe, are good and want to do good in this world. And therefore, we should welcome them and go out of our way to mobilize them. They can do a lot of good. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, it does. But there is a question in my mind that these people who are nice people, so when they go to the level of the government, then they have a different approach. I mean, this is just a question in my
No,
mind.
no. It needs clarification that were these people good at any time? Yes, they were. But because we have talked about materialism then sucks them in. And that doesn't mean that they were good to start off with. If you are vulnerable, if you are purchasable, then if you were good at one time, then you were good in name only. Because nobody has said, so the system is such that it says, the highest aim is to make money. And then they become addicted. So, as we said before, if the powerless tomorrow are in power, they will become just as bad.
Yeah, you can mention.
So, you have to be, and we will talk about it a little bit more later on when we talk about submission to God.
Right. Okay. So, yeah, we had decided that now we will be talking on the each of the solutions in detail, though we had already touched upon some of those areas in our previous sessions. So let us start with the submission to God, which was the first thing.
Right. So, all of these subjects require a lot of explanation, and much more than explanation, they require discussion. Because, these are theoretical. We need to have people open up and discuss them and try to understand them. So, I'm hoping that our future sessions will be determined by what people want to know additionally. What question do they have after listening to this? Is this practical or is this just theory? So the one question is, what do you mean by submission to God? Right? So I want to take a few minutes today to talk about what I think is meant by submission to God. The fundamental thing we have to understand, and people don't understand it, is that we have one life to live. We are all going to die. Whether we will have 50 years or 60 years or 80 years, all our lives will come to an end. This is very important to understand. Why? Because then we have to decide how are we going to conduct ourselves in this life. It's not going to be, are we going to be a hit and run, drive rashly, conduct rash lives, hit people, destroy people, harm people, and then run away. That is the choice. If you want to choose that, that's fine. The other choice is to make your life in this world count by making a legacy, leaving behind something which will live on even after you are no more. You understand? It is possible for us to live for thousands of years. How attractive is that? If I were to say to anybody, you can live for 1,000 years, they will say, oh, tell me how. They will probably mean physically live. But now we are not talking about physical. We are talking about spirituality. So let us now talk in the context of spirituality. And in the context of spirituality, it is possible to live thousands and thousands of years. Look at the people who have left behind legacies, whom we still follow, whom we still admire, whom we say, my God, look at this. This was a life that goes on, although they are buried deep into the ground. Their physical presence is over. So when we talk about a limited life, we're not in the context of submission to God. We're talking about the spiritual life. So that means that you have to have an attitude about life. How do you develop this attitude? 3 things. Firstly, gratitude. So gratitude that we have the opportunity. X, Y, and Z don't have that opportunity. We are the ones who have been given this opportunity. We can take it for granted, or we can say, oh my God, I can breathe, I can eat, I can smell, I can see the beauty in the world, I can have relationships with other people. There is so much to be grateful. So when now we're talking about building an attitude, I said 3 points. First point was gratitude. The second thing is having good intentions, following good intentions, constantly seeking to improve. This is not talk about humility. We are crossing the line into humility also. But seeking to improve and having good intentions is critical to have the right attitude. And And the third thing is looking for guidance. Guidance can come from anywhere, from our parents, from our friends, from our colleagues, from strangers, from teachers, writers, books, the universe. Above all, the universe.
Religion, for that matter, whichever it may be, also seek guidance from our own self. Thinking is very, very important. Yeah.
Uh, I'm glad you mentioned that because this brings me, I said there are 3 points, but now that you have prodded me, there are four points. The fourth point is you have to starve yourself of going in the wrong direction. You have to starve yourself of doing bad things. The temptation will always be there. And I use the word starve in deliberately. I could have used the word avoid. No, do not go in the wrong direction, even for 1 second, because it will suck you in. Like we were talking about before, that the good people were there, but once they were given the temptation of power and wealth, they were no longer good. And they forgot that when they were good, why they were good. So you have to avoid scrupulously doing things which may harm others, doing things which are, not connected to, which is the second point, which we will talk about later, is service to humanity. So this is a good point for me to introduce what is written on the tomb of Martin Luther King. I'm a big fan, and so I have to read it in a sense because what is written on his monument is make a career out of humanity, right? Commit yourself to the noble strength of fighting for equality and human rights. You will make a greater person of yourself, a greater nation of you, of your country, if you were to follow this path. So this was his goal. And he said, when you talk about career, you're talking about, am I going to be a teacher or lawyer? No. Make a career out of humanity, serving humanity. And what a great man he was. And he is going to live thousands and thousands of years.
Yes.
He has left behind a legacy, even if it was cut short by the powerful. They didn't like him. He stood against everything that they wanted to achieve, which is to exploit others. So this is just, I'm giving you a flavor what is meant by submission to God. All this time, we are or have to be conscious of this entity which is invisible, which we cannot see or hear, who has given us this opportunity of a life. So the first step of going into the unknown is submission to God.
Thank you very much, Khusro Sahab, for sharing your valuable thoughts with us. So viewers, we come to the end of this session of the series. I hope you liked it. If so, please like and share this video as much as possible. Please also subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you keep updated with the future uploads. I will encourage and appreciate your questions and comments on this video. Please write them in the comments box. You may also send your comments and questions by email. The email address is askkelly@alimakhtar.com. All this information is also mentioned in the description of this video. Till next time, have a wonderful and thoughtful time. Thank you.